Warringah, who is seeking the call. I give her the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move amendments 1 to 7 as circulated in my name together.
The member for Warringah.
These amendments focus on tightening up the legislation to ensure that the impacts on business productivity and competitiveness of businesses.
Order. The House will come to order. There is far too much noise. Members could leave the chamber quickly and quietly so the member for Warringah can be heard in silence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And if I could say, it's very interesting to see the members of government walking out in the consideration in detail stage of very important legislation. When they were in opposition, they complained about the coalition doing it. But it goes to show, as soon as it changes, the same behaviour applies.
The member for Warringah will return to the amendments.
The unintended consequences of this legislation could have incredibly negative impacts on small businesses in my electorate, and they are still recovering from the impacts of COVID-19. It is misleading to the Australian public to claim that this will get wages moving when there is going to be months of delay and negotiation, complex processes, and the winners will be the unions and the lawyers. It will not be the workers. It is disingenuous of the government to claim that this legislation is to assist feminised industries, when many small businesses are run by women, and they will be the first to suffer when this legislation brings an absolute stalemate to sectors like childcare. In Warringah, there are at least 370 businesses who would be able to engage in or be compelled to engage in multi-employer bargaining under the current definition of a small business having less than 15 employees. The added complexity of being compelled to engage in multi-employer bargaining process will drive fear into many business owners. They are struggling to keep their head above water, still reeling from the impact of COVID-19 and increasing inflation. Productivity impacts are dealt with amendments 1 to 3. They deal with the potential impacts on the productivity of
the member for Aston will cease interjecting.
Amendments 1 to 3 deal with the potential impacts on the productivity of businesses being roped into multi-employer bargain after it has been completed. So they haven't even been part of the negotiations, and the bill currently allows an employee representatives, the unions, to join an employer to a multi-party EBA after the conclusion of the agreement. The Fair Work Commission should consider the potential impacts on productivity of a business as a result of being compelled to sign onto the EBA. This is a straightforward amendment that should not be objected to by government. Public interest test, Amendment 6. The amendment again deals with the potential effects on productivity and competition. The bill is currently drafted, requires the Fair Work Commission to be satisfied that it is not contrary to the public interest to do so before making a single interest authorisation. The problem is that the drafting does not specify what would be contrary to the public interest. There is therefore no guarantee that the Fair Work Commission would take into account the benefits to productivity, competition and consumer protection that come from enterprise-level collective bargaining. The proposed amendment would require the Fair Work Commission to take into account the need to achieve productivity and fairness through an emphasis on enterprise-level collective bargaining and the need to enhance the welfare of Australians through the promotion of competition, fair trading and provision of consumer protections. Amendment 5 deals with common interests. In the single interest stream, the common interest test in the current bill is very loosely defined and could have the effect of lessening competition by obliging smaller competitors to agree to multi-employer agreements with much larger businesses, with the potential that the smaller competitors will simply be priced out of the market. My proposed amendments would oblige the Fair Work Commission to take into account the economic circumstances and the relative size and scope of the employers' enterprises, as well as the extent to which the employers operate collaboratively rather than competitively when determining whether the employers have a common interest. Of course, the small business definition we've heard much today. The bill currently exempts businesses with fewer than 15 employees from being forced into single-interest employer. That figure is ridiculous. Many businesses with up to 50 employees would be unable to compete with large businesses who could afford to absorb the extra cost, or they will be run to the wall. What the amendment proposes is it be a 50 full-time equivalent. At the very least, the government is saying it will consider, and there is dispute on this number. But everyone in this place goes to their community saying they support small business. But yet here we are with legislation that will make it incredibly difficult for small business owners. I think this is really problematic, and this does not have social licence.
The member's time has